Is that this bill be now read a second time, and I call the honourable member for Hinkler.
Well, thank you, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, and we should get back to the main event, which is creating jobs and a strong economy in Australia. So, whilst I'm pleased to be able to make a contribution tonight, it's been very tough to sit through the one from the member for Jagga, and of course we had the member for Rankin here, who's more than happy to jump in with an interjection at any time. But I'm sure if they want to come up to my electorate, they'd find out the reality of living in the world, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, and that is that in regional Queensland things are fairly tough. And certainly in my electorate, the important thing for the people in my electorate is creating jobs, creating employment and providing opportunities for our youth. That is what they want us to do, and that is what we are getting on with. This has been a good budget for business confidence, and I'll give you a really simple example. On the weekend I went into one of the local gas providers. I had a bit of a chat with the owner-operator, who said he'd been doing it relatively tough. He had 2 staff he was considering retrenching because he simply didn't have enough work. In the last 2 weeks he has been absolutely flat out, and last week he did a record week in a business that's been in place for 4 years. Business is starting to pick up, the economy is strengthening, and confidence is what is important and is on the way up as well. But it's important as elected members of electorates across Australia that we have a vision for our electorate, and for me it is one where our economy is strong and resilient, one where we can produce jobs for our youth. And there are a number of projects on the list, certainly on my wish list and on the whiteboard and everywhere else, that we are trying to get over the line, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. And the first one is the provision of a dive wreck at Harvey Bay. Now, HMAS Tobruk, of course, is one of the Navy's great vessels, which has been in service for many years and currently was in Vanuatu not that long ago to provide relief to the people of Vanuatu. However, it is coming to the end of its useful life, and of course in Harvey Bay, where we have a very strong recreational dive group and of course a very strong whaling fleet, we have all of the infrastructure required to expand. Now, HMAS Brisbane, when it was sunk at Caloundra, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, lifted the local economy by some $5 million a year. $5 million worth of economic activity. Now, in the beautiful waters of Harvey Bay, where the water is warm all year round, the sharks are certainly not that bad. I know we have competition. Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. I know of a number of other areas that would like HMAS Tobruk for a dive wreck. But the water in the south is very, very cold and very, very deep, and I'm sure full of knowers. However, in Harvey Bay, we have the infrastructure to make use of a vessel like HMAS Tobruk. So I'm very pleased that a local group has got together. They are putting together all the technical details for an application. We're working with our local councils, including the Bundaberg Regional Council and, of course, Fraser Coast Regional Council. And like all things, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, there is always arguments about location. Location. Where should we put the vessel? But I'd like to, with a suggestion from the For the Logan River, but unfortunately I think it's already full of all sorts of other things. Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank Nicky Schultz from Urangan Fisheries for the advice that he's given to the group. He's identified a spot where the tide is only 1.5 knots maximum, which would mean you could dive on this wreck all day and all night long. It is an opportunity for my region which will build jobs. It will provide additional people that can actually work. They can get out and do a job every single day and look after themselves without support from government. Certainly HMAS Tobruk has got strong ties to the Bundaberg region. We have the Rats of Tobruk Memorial in Bundaberg, a very strong group that looks after the memorial up there, which is of course a replica of the original Rats of Tobruk Memorial. So it's important that we look to the future, and of course I'd like to encourage the Minister for Defence, as that opportunity comes up, to consider my electorate as one of the #1 locations that we could put this ship. It could go on to serve the people of Australia as a dive wreck, as a tourist attraction for the rest of its life. Now, unfortunately, in the Stronger Regions program, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, we missed out on an application for Bundaberg Regional Council. However, like all applications, you need to meet the criteria. So the difficulty with this was that the application was put in under the previous state government with support. Now, the Stronger Regions Fund requires 50% as a co-contribution on top of what's asked for from the federal government. Unfortunately, the change to the Labor state government meant that other part of the funding wasn't forthcoming, so we only had 30% in the tin, which of course meant the project was ineligible. That of course was very disappointing. However, this is what happens when you change to a Labor government. You miss out on infrastructure projects. However, I must actually congratulate them on making a good decision, and that is to maintain the gas infrastructure project into Bundaberg. By 2017, we will have a gas line that runs into the Bundaberg port, and that will support industry and that will create jobs. We already have a commitment from a company called Knopf Australia to build a $70 million plasterboard manufacturing plant at Port Bundaberg that will create some 200 jobs in construction, some 65 permanent positions, and of course add to our GDP. Now, Knopf have told me that they'll also build what's called a pelletising plant, so that we can actually use gypsum from that plant in our agricultural endeavours. Now, for those of you who know the Bundaberg region, and of course the Wide Bay, it is one of the largest horticultural producing areas of Australia. We're the biggest producer of heavy vegetables in this country. So to have someone that can actually facilitate the direct import of lime into a pelletised product for our farmers to use at a much reduced cost will of course lift the farm gate returns. That will make people more viable, and hence they can employ more people, which is exactly what we need in my electorate. Now, the other big issue, of course, as it always is in regional Australia, is roads. So this government has committed $6.7 billion towards the Bruce Highway, some $500 million of which is available in 2015 and 16. Now, I would thank the Minister for Infrastructure, of course the Deputy Prime Minister Warren Truss, the Leader of the Nationals. There's a lot of work which has already been undertaken inside my electorate. We have completed the Goodwood-Childers Road intersection. We have completed overtaking lanes to the north of Howard. Overtaking lanes to the south are underway right now. There's been work at Booyal and Aldershot. Unfortunately, I guess, unlike the member for Flynn, I don't have as much highway in my electorate, but it is in much better condition than it was under the previous federal Labor government, and we are getting on with the job. We need the Bruce Highway to be open. We need to be open regardless of the weather conditions, and we need to be open so we can provide our produce from our electorate all the way to the people of Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne and everywhere else. So I'm very pleased that we're getting on with that. However, there's a number of roads that do need upgrade, which were committed by the previous Liberal National Party government in Queensland. Unfortunately, when the state Labor government took over, those projects are now gone. One of those is the Harvey Bay-Maribor Road Irween intersection. This is a very dangerous crossing. It has a number of school buses that go across the intersection, of course, at school time in the morning and the afternoon. It's a crossing which needs to be upgraded. It is on my list of things that we need to get over the line. We have the Torbenlea crossing upgrade. This is a road which floods regularly and of course cuts off the people in Tugum. It makes it very difficult for them to get in and out whenever there's some weather around. And I've got some personal experience with the Torbenlea crossing, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. I managed to hit it at relatively high speed in a vehicle late at night. It's hard to see. Fortunately, we got out of that without too much trouble. And of course the third one is the extension of the K. Macduff Drive in Bundaberg. This would provide opportunities to direct traffic away from one of the largest high schools in the district, some 1,500 students, out onto the Bundaberg Ring Road. Now, unfortunately, under the new state Labor government, those projects are all gone. However, we will continue to work with both the local members and, of course, our federal ministers to try and get those projects up and running. But while I'm talking about development in the regions, I would like to congratulate Scott Rowe, the new CEO of RDA. Scott's certainly taken that under his wing and got on with the job. And Bill Trevor, as the new chairman, are certainly making inroads into what we need, and that is economic activity in the Hinkler electorate. The biggest issues, of course, outside of jobs are electricity pricing and cost of living. Electricity pricing is absolutely destroying our farm sector. It is making it very difficult for the people who have no money with which to pay. We need to ensure that whatever we do in this place, it does not increase the costs of energy. They simply cannot afford to pay more than they are now. We are up some 300% on mandatory disconnections for non-payment in the state of Queensland. We cannot continue to go on the road in which we are on. We must address this and we must do it fast. But back to the budget. The budget does contain, of course, measures that will help deliver jobs, opportunities and economic growth in a way that is responsible, measured and fair, unlike what they would put forward from those opposite, of course. It is the next step in the Coalition's long-term economic plan to build a stronger, safer and more prosperous future for all Australians. But while we do know that there are economic challenges, as a direct result of the Coalition's strong financial management, our economic and budget position has improved. Now, unfortunately, the contribution from the member for Jagga would like you to believe that we all live in a land of fairy floss. We live in a cardboard house made of chocolate, and of course someone will send you a cheque every week because that is what you need. You will simply roll up and someone will give you money and you can survive. Out in the real world, if you live in the regions, you know you have to go to work. You have to create your own wealth and provide your own opportunities. That has always been the case, it has always been thus, and I'm sure the people of regional Australia will continue to do that. But we are helping them. We are helping them on the way, particularly for small business. So with small companies who have an annual turnover of less than $2 million, we'll have their tax rate lowered from 30% to 28.5%. And as someone who's owned a small business previously, anything you can do to lift the bottom line helps you to employ. Because, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, I have to say that most of the employers I know at the moment are doing everything they can not to employ people. It's simply too complicated, too difficult and too much red and green tape. But we are acting on that, and we're certainly getting it out of the way as soon as possible. Small businesses can claim an immediate tax deduction for each and every item they purchase up to $20,000. And I can tell you that in the local region the tills are starting to ring, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. Small businesses are getting on with it, and I would continue to encourage them to buy local. So wherever possible, get down to your local supplier, purchase locally, because it is local businesses that employ. There is not a lot of employment on the internet. They are employed locally. So wherever possible, go down and buy that new pump, buy that new car, buy that new piece of equipment, whatever it may be that you need for your business, but try and buy it from local providers, because that way the kids of the future will have employment. Of course, we do have an annual 5% discount for those businesses that are unincorporated, up to $1,000 a year. And in agriculture, we have added on $300 million to the drought relief package. Now, for those of us who actually get out and about in regional Queensland and regional New South Wales, the drought is absolutely devastating. It has been considerably tragic, and of course there are a lot of tragic stories to go with it. But we are trying to assist those people as much as possible. All farmers will get an immediate tax deduction for new investment in water facilities, and will be able to fully deduct the cost of new fencing from their tax bill. Now, I've heard it said quite a few times in this place, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, that there doesn't appear to be a lot of new fences that get put up for capital reduction. They tend to be maintenance all round, which I can certainly understand. And of course, inside families and childcare, we have $38 billion to support families, including a $4.4 billion families package aimed at giving parents more choice and opportunity to work. Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, I have to say I was one of those people who was knocking on the Prime Minister's door about this, because the people that come to me tell me that the issue for them is the ability to go back to work. It is as simple as that. It doesn't matter how much you have in your paid parental leave scheme. At the end of that period of time, if you cannot afford childcare, you simply cannot return. If your childcare bill is $49,000 annually and you only earn $48,000, the likelihood of you returning to work is zero. So I'm very pleased that we've made those adjustments, and we're getting on with helping people get back to work if they choose to do so. Now, for job seekers, we have $330 million to help young and disadvantaged Australian job seekers to get their start. Now, in my electorate, this is incredibly important. I have a very high youth unemployment rate. We have any number of people who need assistance. I have some 4,000, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, who are multi-generational welfare dependent. Now, for them, the key issue is to have a driver's licence, because if you live in regional Australia, if you do not have a driver's licence, your ability to get a job is decreased significantly. It is very difficult to get employment if you cannot drive a car and you do not have a car licence. So some of these things I'm hopeful will help to train some of our youth to get those basic skills, those soft skills. They need to show up on time, they need to be dressed, they need to be ready, and they need to be able to go to work for the whole day and, if necessary, leave their phone in the car. Now, I know that's a challenge for some of our youth, however those are generally the requirements of most employers. Certainly for retirees and pensioners, we have no new taxes on superannuation. Because when you look at superannuation, the key issue, the absolute key issue is stability. You need to be able to plan for retirement. You need to know that the government of the day is not going to pull the rug out from under you when you get within a year of retirement or a year after retirement. So we've committed to no new taxes on superannuation in this term of government, and I'm very comfortable with that decision. The age pension will continue to increase. And like what has been mentioned by the member for Jagga, the age pension will go up, and has recently gone up in the last couple of weeks, I believe. Now, more than 170 pensioners with modest assets will have their pensions increased by an average of more than $30 a fortnight. So for those opposite who are thinking about blocking the budget, who just want to vote no, these are the types of things that the people in my electorate need. I have a median income of under $500 a week. Most of the people in my electorate are poor. $30 is substantial change for them, and they need every single bit of it. Those who no longer receive a pension will remain eligible for a Commonwealth concession card, and that certainly helps out. Ever-increasing rates, ever-increasing electricity costs, these things are absolutely spiralling, and we need to get them under control. And as a government, that is certainly our role, because people expect their elected representatives to do what they need, and what they need is to control the cost of living, to ensure that they can pay their bills every day. They are not that concerned about what will happen in 100 years. They are very concerned about what will happen tomorrow and next week. and a 300% increase in disconnections for failure to pay your electricity bill is unacceptable to me. But I commend the budget, I commend the appropriations bills to the House. Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker.
The question is?